Okay, today we're going to be doing a review of Siman Reish Mem tests, which is primarily dealing with the halachas of how much is one allowed to travel before Shabbos, eating before Shabbos, how much could you eat, can't you eat, what type of eating are we talking about? So we're going to go through over here. This is a summary of everything that I've typed on what we've done over the past few weeks, typed up in a Word document, tried to organize it like usual. And this is also going to be uploaded to not only the Hilchos Shabbos playlist, but also the summary playlist, which is a summary of all of the simonim that we learned. This type of style of review, all going to be compiled together. So if a person needs to review it, at least review the summary if you're not going to review the whole thing. And everyone should be reviewing, of course. Very important to remember. Okay, Sif Aleph deals with how far can we travel before Shabbos. So the Torah said that one is not allowed to walk for more than 3 parsaos. Each parsa is approximately 4 miles. 3 times 4. Last time I checked is 12. So that's going to be 12 miles. You're not allowed to walk more than that on Erev Shabbos. On the eve of Shabbos, it also applies on Erev Yontif as well. That should be pointed out. Now, the reason for this, the simple explanation, is so that you could reach a destination before Shabbos comes in, right? Now, it seems like from the sugya that we learned in the Gemara and Sukkah, the whole reason was so that you have food for Shabbos, so that you have time to prepare it and the like. All right, here is a brief list of 3 reasons for this halacha. Number one, you need time to prepare for the food for Shabbos. If you arrive too close to Shabbos, you're not going to have time. We're going to be going into each of these reasons. Number two is you might desecrate Shabbos by still traveling. So you have to be careful not to cut it too close. And number three, and the reason why this is referred to as some say is because you won't see this reason. 99% of people who are learning the Siman will never even hear of this reason. All right, it's not on the page of Shulchan Aruch, it's not in Torah, but this is nevertheless an opinion of the Rosh, which we saw quoted in the Charles Chuvas Binyan Sion. We saw Rav Harfinis in his Nishma Shabbos brought others. They brought this idea from the Rosh, which is the halach of not traveling too much before Shabbos is so that these travels won't detract from your own Shabbos. In other words, if someone is going into Shabbos when they're very tired, they're not going to have a proper Oneg Shabbos. So someone once said as a rebuttal to this, what do you mean? That is my Oneg Shabbos. I just sleep the whole Shabbos. After all, doesn't Shabbos stand for Shena b'Shabbos Tanuk? It's a pleasure to sleep on Shabbos, right? Especially on Shabbos. Always a pleasure to sleep, but especially on Shabbos. So the response to that is Shena, Shabbos also stands for Shena's Bittul Torah, right? So sleep is Bittul Torah, and the question is, what is the definition of Oneg Shabbos? This is the proper rebuttal to which I gave a certain Talmud Chacham, and he had no comeback to this. Because what is Oneg Shabbos? When our extra neshama, that extra soul goes up, that neshama yisera, that's actually a very popular share. People are very interested in that. What is the neshama yisera? What is the neshama yisera? We dealt with the neshama yisera a little bit, but when the neshama yisera goes up to Shemayim, you think that the neshama is going to be going, "Oh Hashem, I had 5 different cuts of meat. I had 8 different types of sushi. I had 4 different types of chalents. I slept for 15 hours on Shabbos." You think that's what that extra soul that we get is going to be bragging about when he goes up? No. All the food, all the sleeping is only a means to an end so that we could be involved with true spiritual pursuits, learning Torah, davening, doing more mitzvahs on Shabbos, etc. So that's the real Oneg Shabbos. So if we're going to go into Shabbos, as we learned about, this isn't new news. We're going to go into Shabbos and we're going to be very tired. How's our Divrei Torah going to be at the Suda? How's our Zmiris going to be? How's all that going to be? First of all, we have to remind ourselves what we learned. Ein Kiddush al Makom Suda. What was the deeper explanation of that? The Kiddush is only the place of where your meal is going to be. So we saw the place to inject Kedusha, holiness into your family is where? Only by the Suda. That's the real place to do it. When you got all the food. We know how it is. You want to get on someone's good side, you wine him and dine him. You get on his good side, you take him out, you treat him to a high-end meal, and then you unleash what you got your punchline. You tell him as is, this is what we got to do. This is the story over here. Right? So that's the idea over here. All right, that's the little side tangent and the side point over here. Those are the 3 reasons. Now, is there a difference between how someone is traveling? Because note, when we learned the Torah is discussing walking. We have a lot of different methods of traveling nowadays, right? A lot of different ways. So is there a difference? So the Bach already points out that you're not allowed to walk more than 12 miles. And the reason simply is you're going to be tired if you're going more than 12 miles, right? However, the custom, says the Bach, is to go further than 12 miles on a wagon or a horse on Erev Shabbos, certainly a car. Certainly a car. The Pri Megadim explains that someone who travels by foot, he's going to be more tired and it's going to take more time for him to travel, as we just alluded to before. However, if you're traveling by other methods, aka you're not a pedestrian, then it's permissible to travel even more than 12 miles because number one, you're going to get to your destination quicker. Number two, you're not going to be as tired based on what we learned before. Now, it's better, the Bach says something very interesting even after he quotes, it's better that the Jews mutav sheyeshoigig value mezdin, better that they accidentally violate this rather than purposely violate this. So you see, even according to the Bach, he doesn't want you traveling too much. Nevertheless, the Bach says you have to be careful not to travel until right before Shabbos because many times people have stumbled and desecrated Shabbos because of this. Or Chashulchan, Gimel says that the Satan typically prosecutes an Erev Shabbos. You have to be very careful. He's going to cause all types of delays and everything, and you got to be careful about this. Now, the idea over here is this is a Bach. General halacha is you could definitely travel more than 12 miles if it's not by foot, but you have to be careful if your distances that are traveling more than an hour. And all right, we're going to come to it more, but you clearly see also from the Bach better not to travel at all. That's going to come to that it was the custom of certain righteous people not to travel at all over Shabbos. General halacha is not that way, but at least it's brought down. Maybe we'll see. It's going to come up in the notes. I forgot because I wrote this like a week ago. Is there a difference if there is food from at his destination? The answer is obvious to this question. Yes. Oh, by the way, you know what we should start doing over here? We should start bolding the important points.
Bolded with halacha l'maisa.
Yeah, that's halacha l'maisa right there.
Okay.
That difference between 12 and not. That's a difference. If that's not true, then how far is Brooklyn from here?
I think it's,
Under 12?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, you're
Well,
not.
wait, as far as walking,
No, how far is the distance? Far Rockaway to Borough Park?
the
Could be
Borough Park, well, Borough Park is very different than Brooklyn.
Okay, to Borough Park.
It's 30 minutes, no?
No, New York City is
No, no,
18. I know that for a fact.
Oh, New York City's 8.
no, no, in Brooklyn is it's probably like a little over 20 miles to Borough Park, maybe.
Yeah. So according to this, you can't go to Passaic. So you can't do a lot of things, right? If you're going to be stringent. But
Oh.
he says over here the custom is to go more than 12, right? But
But then we get
he isn't happy with this.
the
Right.
closest part of Brooklyn though is much closer than Borough Park.
Yeah,
What's
yeah,
the
yeah. Okay, fine. So then it wouldn't apply Brooklyn. Okay, so let's say Passaic, whatever it is. Is there a difference if there's food at your destination? The answer is yes. Nowadays, the Magen Avraham says most people prepare extra food. So therefore, this potential issue of needing time to prepare Shabbos food doesn't apply. Okay, Nishma Shabbos it would apply in a place like in Israel if they have very tight on the food. The Nishma Shabbos says that someone who is traveling could inform the people that he will be arriving there. That would eliminate the food preparing issue. Right? You call them up on the phone, you let them know before. A lot of times they know before that you're coming. Similarly, either supermarkets or neighbors who are easily able to provide extra food, there's no issue. Furthermore, there is no issue for someone who is going to a hotel. Now, it should be pointed out that if you're going to arrive close to Shabbos, guess what? These supermarkets are going to be closed, so you can't rely on that. So you have to know in certain areas in Israel, when everything is very, very tight and they have the exact amount of food, then this could apply.
I haven't wondered what when you go to a supermarket nowadays, like in anywhere we live in the five towns of Brooklyn, there's so much meat on the shelf, and like there's no way they're selling all this meat, like very fancy meat. And
That's
I don't
okay. They sell it the next week.
but you can't sell, it has dates on it. I don't know what do they do with all this meat?
Okay,
There's
that
no
has nothing to do. You could ask your grocer. That has nothing to do with Hilchot Shabbos. They give it to poor people, or they give it away, or they freeze it. I don't know. What if someone is in a dangerous area? So the lavish says that someone is allowed to walk more than 12 miles to get to his destination, even if he has food with him, if he's in a dangerous area. And the reason for this, and this is incredibly fundamental in the mahus of Oneg Shabbos, what is the essence of having pleasure on Shabbos? If you're worried about the dangers, you're going to be in pain over Shabbos and you won't have a proper Oneg Shabbos. The Shulchan Aruch says that Oneg Shabbos isn't only about eating and drinking. Rather, being in a comfortable environment, it is also part of Oneg Shabbos. Therefore, if someone who is in a dangerous area would be afraid during Shabbos, and this would detract from his Oneg Shabbos, therefore, you're allowed to go more.
Did
Okay?
we discuss how much this, you can go with in terms of being over lavin? But this is just saying that you can still walk on Erev Shabbos, even if it's more than 12 miles, when it's still mutter to travel.
That's correct. That's exactly what
Not
it's
the fact
saying.
that if all of a sudden it's Spanish Shmoshos and you have to stop the car.
No, no, not traveling on Shabbos itself. But if it's a very dangerous situation, which is life-threatening, then for sure you could. Because if your life is truly at risk, you have to calculate that usually that's not the case where we live.
Hmm.
Not at all. I would say maybe the only two places where your life would be at risk. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but I mean the most two dangerous places in America are certain areas of Chicago and Baltimore City. Those are facts. So you have to know. Usually I would say it's not dangerous in America anywhere, for the most part. So how much buffer time?
Hold on.
Cold? I mean, you have to find a house, find somewhere to. How much buffer time does one need to leave from when he arrives at? How much buffer time does one need to leave from when he arrives at his destination and Shabbos? How much buffer time do you need from your ETA till when Shabbos starts? Or let's
Double time.
Oh, very good. It's one of the things we learned. But halach lemaisa, that's a little bit more stringent than we hold of it. But very good that you remember that. We're going to see right now the exact time. Or Letzion in the Shilos and Chuvas in the Chelik Beis, Perik Tezayin in Chuva Vav says that you need to reach your destination minimally 1 hour before Shabbos. This is a general halacha, David. 1 hour before Shabbos. The reason for this buffer time is there might be a car accident that will delay the trip. You might need to change your tire. You might need more air. You might have another setback, traffic. Most accidents won't delay your trip for more than an hour. Shulchan Aruch relates that one should reach his destination an hour or two before Shabbos.
Hmm.
Okay. Nishma Shabbos, that's the Shulchan Aruch and Nisimin. The Nishma Shabbos is in Tshuva Kuf Yud says that in Israel they enacted in Israel in Israel. In Israel, they enacted that one shouldn't travel Erev Shabbos unless he will leave double the amount of time it takes to travel as a buffer time of his estimated time of arrival on Shabbos. See, David, that's where you got it from. That was an
Hold on.
enactment in Israel,
Hmm.
right? But that's not the general halacha.
Like that there is-
Yeah, yeah, and even in Israel, they enacted, but general halacha, an hour or two. That's general halacha. This is, look, if you want to be more stringent, it's a nice idea. By the way, if you want to be even more stringent, you could go like the Chazon Ish. You wouldn't travel a lot on Shabbos. Stipler says um, that this refers to a trip that is more than 4 hours. Hmm? So, the trip to Baltimore, it could very well be over 4 hours. When we do it, we only do it at night, so it takes us 3 hours, 15 minutes, 3.5 hours. But we have the power of electricity also. But most people, I would say, it takes around 3.5 hours. But with traffic, it could easily take over 4 hours. So look, general halacha is mutter. You know, this is the Chazon Ish. Chazon Ish discourage traveling after chatzos halachic midday. General halacha is you should leave at least an hour of time before Shabbos begins. This is referring to a trip that's over an hour. This isn't a short trip. I'll just put in parentheses. This refers to a trip over an hour. This isn't talking about if you are traveling, you know, 20 minutes away. If you're going to West Hempstead, this is not what he's saying. It's talking about a trip. Okay. I guess I didn't put it here, but there were certain tzaddikim who didn't travel at all Erev Shabbos. I didn't put it here. It's a tremendous. It's a stringency.
After last Shabbos.
The whole day. The whole day.
Right, not
Here, I
Thursday.
mean, here it is. Here it is. The Chazon Ish wouldn't spend a lot of time traveling Erev Shabbos. This is not Thursday night.
Not Thursday.
This is talking about actual Friday. I put it in kind of, but it's brought by other tzaddikim also. They didn't spend a lot of time traveling because of what we're saying. General halacha is not that way. General halacha is you could travel. You could travel more than 12 miles. You could even travel more than 4 hours. This is talking about car right now. Talking about you're driving the car. Um, but you want to arrive at least an hour at your destination beforehand. What about planes? You got to be careful with that. Many times the delays. You have to leave a buffer for planes. That's going to be 2 hours. Now, that's a 2 hour buffer in addition to the time that you need to travel from the airport to your house. I think that's a lenient psak from Rav Harfness, if you ask me, in Siman Kuf Yod. Because a lot of times delays could be more than an hour. And we're talking about multiple methods of transportation. You need the plane, and then you need from there. Also, we could add in what type of plane are you traveling? Most people travel on a commercial flight. So that I would hear you need at least 2 hours buffer. If you're traveling on a helicopter or private, so you don't need that type of time because there's not going to be a delay. There aren't delays. You know, they just take right off. You don't need to wait for anyone else. It's just you. Private jet. The only delay would be, not that I've experienced. I never went on a private jet before, but private plane. But the only delay would be on the actual plane, which you would be able to make the call yourself whether you're going to take off or not because it's your plane. So you wouldn't have this issue as much. You probably wouldn't need as much time. Amtrak's, trains. You also need to factor in delays. Even Amtrak, when you pay for a ticket that's $100 one way, there could still be delays. Doesn't matter if you're in business. There could still be delays. Doesn't matter first class on a plane. Delays are delays. So you have to be careful. Or Tzion rules that someone uses a taxi that's being driven by someone Jewish, you have to leave enough time before Shabbos for the driver to get back to his residence. Doesn't really apply so much over here, but in Israel this applies. So you got to be careful with that, okay? What should someone do if Shabbos begins while he's still traveling? So you're not allowed to continue driving. This is even if you don't even have any food for Shabbos. You have nothing. You don't have challah, kiddush. Leave your car in an area that isn't dangerous. And in a case of urgency, someone who isn't Jewish can drive him to his house if it's before when 3 stars emerge.
Now,
These halachas we're going to be learning more in later Simanim Hilchos Shabbos. Yeah.
yeah, because isn't it part of the Hasidim, how their Ben Shmosho starts, so you would have a little more time.
Okay, it could be. That's going to be Siman Reish Samach Aleph. We're going to tackle that Siman
Okay.
soon. These halachas, we're not going to tackle that soon because it's at the end of Hilchos Shabbos. And but if we keep
the end of Rosh Shabbos, where is it?
it gets discussed over there. These types of
At the end of Chel Gimel?
these types of this is where he's quoting from. I remember from the Tshuva who's quoting from places over there. If we look at that Tshuva again. Okay, so that is the discussion of traveling before Shabbos. Did we leave anything out in terms of main bullet points? I think this is a good synopsis, I would say.
Wait, how much differentiation did they mention at all? Like, summer, we mention all summer, winter and stuff?
Oh, yeah, okay. It doesn't make a difference over here because we're talking about you have to be there a couple hours before Shabbos, so it doesn't matter what time Shabbos starts. Shabbos starts.
I know what I'm saying, as far as they didn't differentiate
That was by
between.
eating before Shabbos, which we're going to get to right now.
All right.
Yeah. Okay, eating before Shabbos. Shulchan Aruch says it's prohibited. Oh, looks like I already went on my bolding rampage for the rest of this. Just the first I didn't. Shulchan Aruch rules that it's prohibited to have a set meal and drinking that you're not used to during the week on Erev Shabbos in order that we will enter into Shabbos with an appetite. This applies the entire day. This is talking about you're having a very large meal, larger than you have during the week. You can't do that Erev Shabbos. The Be'er Halacha quotes the Pri Megadim who says someone who eats a lot on Erev Shabbos belittles the honor of Shabbos because he equates Erev Shabbos to Shabbos. The general reason is not like this Pri Megadim, it's to go into Shabbos with an appetite, but this is something nice to have in the back of your head. Ramah adds that a meal which is on Erev Shabbos, such as a meal for bris or pidyon haben, is permissible. Even so, Be'er Halacha rules that someone who estimates that by eating at a bris or pidyon haben he won't be able to eat Shabbos night shouldn't eat at the bris or pidyon haben. This refers to if he will be so full at night that it will be considered an achilas gasa, overeating, which isn't halachically considered eating. So the Be'er Halacha says, if you know that by you eating, you're not going to be able to eat your Shabbos Suda, don't eat at the bris or pidyon haben. The reason for this is the Shabbos meal is obligatory. The Suda on Shabbos is a chiyuv. Unlike the Suda by bris or pidyon haben, that meal by the bris or pidyon haben is a mere minhag. It's custom. Take a look at Shulchan Aruch in your Deya, Simin Reish Samach, Sif Yud Beis, as well as Simin Shin Hey in your Deya Sif Yud. Most times this halacha wouldn't apply because people will still have room to eat on Shabbos, albeit with the same appetite. In this case of the Be'er Halacha could happen if a bris or a pidyon haben is later in the day and closer to Shabbos. So this is only talking about if by you eating at the bris or pidyon haben, you're literally going to have no room at all. But if you'll still have room later, so then you can split it up. You got to be smart, just don't eat too much. Shulchan Aruch explains that eating and drinking not during a set meal is permissible to begin the entire day from the letter of the law. Even so, there's a mitzvah to refrain from establishing this meal from 9 halachic hours into the day and on. So this is talking about just like a regular weekday meal you're having. You could do that the whole day technically. Make din from the letter of the law. However, from 9 halachic hours and on, you should stop. This refers to a meal that people typically have during the week, not on Shabbos. This meal is thus smaller than a regular Shabbos meal. Mishnah Berurah says that in the winter, when the days are shorter, it is a mitzvah to refrain from establishing a meal even before 9 halachic hours in the day if one estimates that his eating will cause him to lose his appetite for the Shabbos meal. David, this is exactly what you're referring to before. Wrong sifta.
Yeah.
So in the winter, 9 halachic hours into the day could be like 9 hours into the day, could be like 2 o'clock. You're going to sit down at 5:30. You're going to be sitting down having a couple slices of pizza. You're not going to be hungry. Shabbos Suda, that's a problem.
When you were having Shabbos, right? It all depends when you're starting Shabbos.
No, in the winter you started every
Oh,
Shabbos at the same time, yeah. Be'er Halacha says that it's permissible to eat a little, before the Be'er Halacha. So therefore in the winter, even though from the letter of the law it's permissible, make a din before 9 halachic hours, you got to be careful. I don't know why that wasn't bolded.
You have enough possible electricity before you said that too.
That's right. We're not even just talking about washing. We're talking about eating anything.
Oh, there's donuts too?
Yeah, and I'm going to tell you a big Kiddush. How about Aval Metabel, who the Gemara in Pesachim Kuf Zayin says Aval Metabel who b'mini targima. On Erev Pesach, you could add all of the shahakol, ha'etz, and adama items that you want before Pesach. But guess what? If you're having a lot, you can't. If you're having a lot and you know you're going to get filled up, then you have to be careful.
No, stuff can't fill you up.
You're going to be having 8 pieces of. You're going to be having 2 pieces of steak. I mean, come on, it's going to fill you up. 2 big pieces of steak.
And potatoes or French fries.
With potatoes, with French fries. I mean, what are you trying to do over here? So it matters, yes, whether it's hamotzi or mazonos, but what's more important is the quantity. That's why look at this chiddush of the Be'er Halacha. The Be'er Halacha says that it's permissible to eat a little bread in order to quiet your hunger, even after 9 halachic hours. Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Berurah explains the Be'er Halacha permits this even l'chachila. So this is 100% permissible. You could even wash and have bread after 9 hours if you're just having a little. You're having a half of a piece of rye bread. Originally, when we did this, I said a full piece of rye bread is never good. Now I'm saying even less because maybe a full piece could whatever. I thought about it after I said it. You're having a half of a piece of rye bread a couple hours before Shabbos. That's not going to fill you up. You really need it because you're so hungry and you're not going to be able to focus on davening. It's permissible even the chachila. You know you're still going to have an appetite later on. It's a half of a piece of rye bread.
What, quell your hunger.
Yeah, you're quieting it. It's making your stomach making noise. It's saying, "Feed me, feed me." You know. The Gemara in Gittin relates that there was one family in Yerushalayim, is on Lamed Ches, that established a meal on Erev Shabbos. They were uprooted. They got killed. Not good. Mishnah Berurah quotes Rima Gadim, who says that the same applies Erev Yom Tov. Okay, I said that before. There's also a mitzvah of kavod on Yom Tov. All these halachas also apply before Yom Tov. Okay, this is another. Okay, we're right on schedule to finish this. Good, because I didn't want to rush here. What about Kiddush Shabbos morning? This was also it was much more popular than I thought. I titled it "Think Twice Before You Eat at a Kiddush." I'm surprised. Got a couple of views there. I don't know. I was surprised. Got like 10, 15 views or something.
That's a lot or a little?
That's better than usual. Usually they just get
That's a grabber.
it's a grabber.
It's an attention grab.
Now everything's getting at least 5 within the first 48 hours. Everything, no matter what. All right, keep going. Yeah, amen. So the Ber Halacha relates that the custom is to be lenient Shabbos morning, like the Ramah, and eat mezainis after Kiddush. Custom is you make Kiddush and true. Shulchan Aruch Harav says don't protest to those who are lenient. So just look at what they're calling it. Custom is to be lenient. Just underline a few words over here. You don't protest those who are lenient. Just like look at the words over here that is being used. Parallel concludes by saying there are men of great deed who are stringent on themselves when possible to immediately have challah after Kiddush. I don't know, I'm just feeling this. Regardless, everyone agrees that it's correct not to fill up one's stomach by eating too much before the meal with challah.
Yeah.
Either way you hold, if you're gonna have the Kiddush, you can't eat too much. Yeah.
Now, let's say there's no shalom bias problem. There's challah at the big Kiddush.
Okay.
And then this way you can make your.
So that's gonna be your Suda.
That's
At the
gonna be
Kiddush.
Suda, at the Kiddush.
Okay. You have a place to sit?
Let's say there are tables there and
There's a place to sit, there are tables. Okay. So then technically it would be permissible.
and then
It's nice if you could sit with someone. Nice if there will be Zmiros. There's going to be Divrei Torah like the Suda. Then that would be fine. And it has been that some people started putting out challah at Keddushim and do this. Yeah.
Shalosh Shiddush you can't have really technically till after half an hour after Chasos.
Yes,
right?
correct. Ber Halacha relates that
And again, you can't start that Shalosh Shiddush.
you cannot start. No,
So
it gets tricky. Like when Pesach falls out, then
well, we talked
Shabbos.
about that because we try
Okay,
to be
no,
like the
that-
people who
but in
say
general,
this
you
just to
shouldn't.
fulfill it. Right.
Yeah, but in
You
general,
can't bring
no.
a raya from Pesach. The
That's
Pesach
right.
you're just trying to fill the makel those sheets that hold that you
Exactly.
could have
There's no
Shalosh
other
Shiddush
way.
before.
There's no other
There's
way.
no-
Now, the Ber Halacha relates. This is the Ber Halacha not in our Siman. This is in Hilchos Kiddush in Reish Ayin Gimel. That the Vilna Gaon would only make Kiddush where we would have his meal. Charles Tshuva Shalmas Chaim says, Reusen Chaim Zonnenfeld, that if someone ate mezainis after Kiddush, this is in Chelik Aleph and Siman. If someone ate mezonos after Kiddush in order to be Kovei Makom Sud, to establish the place of the meal, he had Kiddush in Shul, he should make a new Kiddush when he goes to the next location, aka home, where he's going to be having his meal. Simple reason for this is according to the Gra, he wasn't Kovei Makom Sud, he didn't establish a place at the first location, and therefore didn't fulfill his obligation of Kiddush. Shuvas Van Hagos explains, as Moshe Sternbach in Chelik Aleph Siman Reish Samach Daled, if this seems new material and surprising, and we haven't covered in the last 2 weeks, it's because it is. We covered this when we learned Siman Reish Ayin Gimel and Hilchos Kiddush. And these are notes that were written over there, copied and pasted to over here. Chuvas and Hagos explains another reason why Kiddush should be made again is because the main reason why Kiddush was enacted was because of the Suda, the meal, as the Rambam says. Therefore, in order that is recognizable that this Kiddush is for the meal, it should be made before the meal itself. Many people make Kiddush in Shul because they hold that one can be Kovei Makom Suda Mazonas. It's considered a meal when you have your Mazonas. Only making one Kiddush before the meal, only making one Kiddush before the Suda is a stringency, meaning that's going to be your whole Kiddush. You're only doing one Kiddush before the meal, it's stringency. Even the girl holds that Me'ikr Hadin, one could establish a meal on Mazonis. You could be Kavayim Makom Suda on Mazonis. Even the girl would hold that from the letter of the law. It should be pointed out that making another Kiddush again before the meal is an early custom that the Shilti Giburim relate. Shmir Shabbos Kolchas explains that for some reason someone made Kiddush Shabbos night and then ate Mazonis. He should not make Kiddush a second time before he eats in another location because it's a doubt if this would be a bracha in vain. This halacha wouldn't apply often, but nevertheless, fascinating halacha.
Now, what's the difference? Is it because Friday night's a daraisa and that you fulfilled technically? Like why is Shabbos day different in this regard?
Yeah. From what I remember, he doesn't really explain so much, but there's a less of an idea of making a Kiddush Shabbos night because, right, that's actually what's not in the notes. That's not in the notes. That's left out. That could very well be over here. That's the deeper idea behind this Be'er Halacha. The oops. The deeper idea behind this Be'er Halacha is it's funny because okay, I mean it's brought over here. This touches upon what it deals with. You don't want to fill up your stomach before you have the meal. So on Shabbos night or Yom Tov night, when you're eating the entire day and then you're gonna have a kiddush, you're really gonna have no more room. Shabbos morning or Yom Tov morning, you're already gonna have more room because you didn't eat anything the whole day except for just that. So you'll still be hungry when you go back home. So therefore, that's the idea as to if you made it Shabbos night, it could now potentially be much more of a problem. And you already fulfilled your obligation with that. Something along those lines. Yeah, something
The whole
along
thing
those
like
lines.
the what's it called? Like Hulu, when you come home, you just take your Shabbos to the wife and bring it down to the Rabbanon, right?
Okay, that's something else, but this requires more research. Someone who always has lavish meals, aka someone wealthy, or just always have lavish meals. Be'er Halacha says someone who is very wealthy and has lavish meals every day should be careful not to have a lavish meal on Erev Shabbos in order that he can enter into Shabbos with an appetite. Furthermore, on Shabbos, he should change the timing of his meal. The reason for this is in order that he will do something different on Shabbos than during the week. In other words, the idea being over here is that since he always has nice meals, first of all, make sure that you have an appetite going to Shabbos, and secondly, you're gonna have a nice meal on Shabbos also. So what are you gonna do different? So if you could have more food, great. If you can't, then at least change your timing, do something different. Fasting before Shabbos. Shulchan Aruch says this is Sif Gimel now. It is the way for men of great deed to fast Erev Shabbos. Mishnah Berurah quotes the Bach and the Magen Avraham, who says that one shouldn't fast Erev Shabbos in order that he doesn't enter into Shabbos when he's fasting unless he's very sensitive. And if he eats during the day, he won't have an appetite at night. So this Shulchan Aruch, that's why most people don't really fast nowadays. The Gemara says that a change in one's cycle is the beginning of sickness in one's stomach. But Mitzia Kuf Mem Vov Amud Aleph. Many people, after they fast, are unable to eat spicy and fatty foods. Many people will get sick if they would break their fast on such foods. This is not an honor to Shabbos. That's typically why we don't fast before Shabbos. However, next Siv, Shulchan Aruch says that someone who accepts to fast on Erev Shabbos needs to fast until three stars emerge, unless he specifies when he accepts the fast that he will fast until the congregation finishes their davening. Regarding fasting on a parent's yurt site, many rabbis hold that nowadays people are weaker. It's in the Halicha Shalom Amadim in the Chelik Beis and Parak Yud Gimel Ha in the Halacha Tezvav. This especially applies in the Orchos Halacha. This especially applies to people who learn Torah. The fast will prevent them from learning properly. Steiper rules this way. He explains that fasting causes bittul Torah and it's better to learn Ilu Nishmas to help elevate the soul of the person who you would potentially be fasting for, usually a parent. So the idea over here is that this is talking about when we say better not to enter into Shabbos when you're fasting. These are talking about like optional fasts. If it's a mandatory fast, it's a mandatory fast. You got to do what you have to do. So that's the idea over here. Even so, when there is a mandatory fast, it should be done in a way that it will it should be done in a way that it will be that the davening will end at a time that will enable people to get to their house, and right when they get to their house, they could start Kiddush. Not that it's going to be like an hour later. Okay, that's the summary of Siman Reish Mem Tes. The plan is to start Siman Reish Nun Aleph next. I will just pose a question to get everyone thinking. Is it permissible to work Erev Shabbos? And what is work? And if so, until what time? And even if you are allowed to work, is that preferable? And if it wouldn't be preferable, then when should you preferably stop working? And what is work? Does that mean you're only getting paid? Or could you be doing work even if you're not getting paid? So I can't mow someone else's lawn, but I could mow my own. What exactly are the halachas with this? What about learning also Erev Shabbos? How much? How little? Doesn't matter if you have help. You don't have help. That's what we're going to be covering on the next Siman Mitzvah Hashem.
So,
Sure.
Brochim to you.
What is work?
what is work?
Devin knows the answers.
He does?
No.
Watch
Nothing.
the Shir on Pirkei Avos, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Yud, working versus learning, and Kolo, 52 minutes. Oy hey v'esam malacha, it says in the Mishnah, love working.
Yeah.
Okay, have a good day. Sorry, that one I oh,
Which one?
it was a lot.
Oh, wait, that's
All right.
yeah.